Welcome to the Tales to Inspire podcast. Before we get started on this episode, I would like to invite you to our community so that you can hear more stories to inspire change within your life and positive change within the systems in which we live. All I want you to do is to click on the subscribe button. Your comments mean the world to us with anything that's resonated with you, and I absolutely love your support. I can't wait to go on this journey alongside you. Thank you so much for subscribing. Let's get into today's episode. Today's themed episode focuses on something every single one of us will experience throughout our lives: adapting to circumstances. Because the truth is, life is constantly changing. Sometimes those changes are exciting. Sometimes they're painful. Sometimes they arrive gradually. And sometimes they arrive completely out of nowhere. Whether it's the loss of a loved one, the ending of a relationship, a health diagnosis, losing a job, financial pressure, adapting to parenthood, moving country, or simply navigating a version of life we never expected, adapting to circumstances is something all of us must face. And whilst change has always been part of the human experience, that certainly doesn't make it easy. We live in a world where many systems around us can often feel rigid. Expectations can feel fixed. Society can sometimes tell us there is only one path, one timeline, one version of success. Yet life rarely unfolds in straight lines. Adapting does not mean pretending things are okay when they are not. It does not mean avoiding grief, pain, or challenge. Sometimes adapting simply means taking the next step forwards. Sometimes it means surviving long enough to eventually thrive again. In today's episode, we revisit 3 incredible Tales to Inspire champions who each share their powerful reflections around adapting to circumstances in their own lives, from mindset and resilience to identity and disability to overcoming adversity and rebuilding through challenge. These conversations remind us that while circumstances may change, our ability to respond, grow, and continue moving forwards remains incredibly powerful. In episode 167, we heard from Steve Hill, who shared why adaptability and flexibility are so important both within our personal lives and within the systems in which we live. Steve reflects on how, as a teacher, every single day requires him to adapt. He speaks about greeting every child at the classroom door with a smile and a high five, whilst recognizing that every young person walks into school carrying completely different experiences, emotions, and challenges from home. What stands out so powerfully from Steve's conversation is the idea that adaptability is deeply connected to mindset. He openly acknowledges that not everybody naturally finds it easy to adapt. Some people struggle when life throws unexpected curveballs their way. Yet Steve shares how he has learned to embrace uncertainty rather than fear it. Whether taking on extreme endurance challenges around the world, facing injuries and setbacks, or navigating unexpected moments in life, Steve explains that adapting is often about responding positively to what is directly in front of you, rather than becoming overwhelmed by what might happen next. He also reflects on how many of the systems in which we live can themselves be incredibly rigid. In particular, he discusses the education system and how prescriptive it can sometimes feel, with little flexibility for individuality, creativity, and inspiration. Steve, welcome to the Tales to Inspire podcast, mate. So essentially, I want to go into your story, but before we go into that, I really want to talk about adapting to circumstances. So why is adapting to your circumstances so important to you?
I think it's really important in life to adapt to the circumstances that you find yourself in, whether that's in work, on your personal life. So as a teacher myself, I need to adapt every morning. As I said, I've got 30 children that are a big part of my life, and it's a privilege to be part of their lives, but I'm not quite sure what is going to come in through that door in the morning. I do ensure that I'm stood at the door, they all get a high five and a big smile from sir, but things happen at home and whatever those children bring into class in the morning, I've got to deal with it, and that's before the teaching starts. So I've got to be flexible and adaptable. And in my own life, I take on challenges around the world, and my goodness me, things happen within a split second. A split trainer, toenails hanging off, swollen feet, and it's about adapting accordingly. And a lot of that's about mindset for me. It's dealing with whatever's thrown at you and dealing with it in a positive way. I always say, with a smile on your face, one step at a time. So yeah, really important to be adaptable.
Do you feel humans are naturally good at it? Or do you think it's a taught thing?
I don't think some people are good at it, to be honest with you. I think when a curveball's thrown your way, some people find it hard to cope with. I don't know whether I've been taught, but I manage to adapt quite well with that. You know, I'm not in training in that way, but I don't think some people are very good at adapting. I think they need to know exactly what's going to happen, but life's not like that, is it, unfortunately?
No. And what about the systems in which we live? So obviously you work in the education system and you've experienced that system. But you can talk about any of the systems that we do live in. How adaptive do you think they are?
I think the education system is very rigid at the moment, very prescriptive. As a teacher, we're told what to teach, we're told how to teach it, we're told how long to teach it for. And personally, I don't like that. I think it is too robotic. We need characters, we need charisma, we need inspiration in the classroom. And yeah, I'm not saying we haven't got that, but we're very restricted in how and what we've got to do on a day-to-day basis. And as a teacher, I want to see some changes within the system, because for me, we're not inspiring our next generation to dream big, to follow the dreams, to get out there, contribute to the world, to society, and be the best that they can be. And that's what I try and do as a teacher. Many do, I'm sure, but there's a lot of prescriptive teaching within this system at the moment.
In terms of like circumstances, we know that so many difficult things, whether that's a global thing like COVID, or whether it's a individual thing like illness and things like struggles within the family environment, circumstances change. That's a fact of life. How can we support ourselves? Do you have any tips that you do for yourself? Like, is there any things that you do that support you to ensure that you're better at adapting when those circumstances change?
Yeah, I mean, I can give a quick example now of, adapting. I set a charity up in 2019, just prior to COVID and lockdown, on the back of a visit to Uganda, Team Hill Charitable Trust. And the charity had not been set up for too long, and then lockdown came. And a discussion with my trustees was, well, that's it, Steve, there's not a lot we can do. And it was a case of, no, we're a charity. Yes, circumstances have changed. We found ourselves in COVID, in lockdown. We're a charity. We step up to the mark. We adapt, we change, our focus, and we help wherever we can within our community, and we did. And we saw a need to support the elderly and the vulnerable. And we started to undertake food shops and prescription pickups. And over the period of time of lockdown, I think we did about 4,500 shops and prescription pickups for the elderly. And it was phenomenal, because we started doing that and it brought a team of people together. People approached us and said, we want to do something. We're not sure what. We've seen what you're doing. Can we come and join? Can we help? And that was a real special start to our charity, if you like. It wasn't expected, it wasn't planned for, but we adapted, we changed, and we like to think we made a difference at that time. And possibly it was the making of the charity, because it's gone from strength to strength since then. Me personally, I do enjoy those challenges and those setbacks in life. I embrace that, and that's why I take on the summer challenges that I do each year. And yeah, I'm quite good at adapting and dealing with what's thrown at me. Each day, each week kind of challenge, and as I say, embrace that, and I quite enjoy it. It's all part of the challenge for me.
I guess it kind of comes down to not trying to plan too far ahead.
No.
Like, if you, with the charity, this is who you are, this is what you're going to do, and this is how it's going to go, you would have never been able to adapt. And all the things you keep throwing yourself into as an individual, all these unbelievable challenges, if you plan too far ahead, what's the point?
What's the point, yeah. You never know what tomorrow's going to bring, do you? It's like you say, planning's great, but like you say, it's being flexible, like you said, being adaptable, adapting to circumstance, adapting to change, and embracing that and enjoying that bit of uncertainty that's around the corner. And as I say, facing it up head on with a smile on your face.
Mm-hmm. Maybe writing your plans in pencil and not pen.
Absolutely, yes.
And having everything can change.
In episode 169, Kate Appleby shares an incredibly honest reflection around adapting to circumstances through the lens of thriving versus surviving. Kate speaks about how every single person, regardless of their background, faces daily circumstances that require adaptation. Some days we have the capacity to thrive. Other days we are simply trying to survive. And both are okay. What's particularly powerful in Kate's conversation is her reminder that adapting is not always easy or comfortable. Adapting can be painful. It can involve emotional hardship, physical struggle, uncertainty, loss. Yet, despite this, adapting remains part of the human condition. Kate reflects on how modern life can sometimes distance us from our natural ability to adapt, because we live in a world that often seeks quick fixes, instant results, and certainty. But real growth rarely happens instantly. One of the most moving parts of Kate's episode is the way that she describes building her personal toolkit to navigate difficult circumstances. Using a red, amber, and green system, she creates small, achievable actions depending on the level of physical or emotional capacity she has on that day. On green days, she might push herself towards larger challenges. On amber days, smaller, achievable goals. And on red days, simply getting outside for a coffee or calling a friend could be enough.
So I live by the kind of motto about thrive or survive. And to me, every single person, regardless of your background or your situation, you are every single day challenged with a set of circumstances, right? Whether it be you get up and the weather isn't what you're expecting, or your day at work is more challenging than you expected. Every single day will present opportunities and challenges, and it's about what you do in those circumstances. I think often we get distracted by talking about privilege or background, but we all have a certain amount of capability in our day to choose whether we want to thrive or we want to survive. And some days you just have to survive, and some days you have that capability to thrive. So I live my day every day trying to see what I can adapt, what I can overcome, and what I can do ultimately to make sure there are more days where I'm thriving rather than just surviving.
Do you feel that as humans, we're naturally good at adapting, and do you feel like we have a tendency to be better at either thriving or surviving?
So it's a really interesting question. I think we naturally are meant to be able to adapt, right? Every single species, if you look historically over evolution, has that ability to adapt. We have to adapt in order to survive. So there is a natural ability in us to want to do that. But it's not easy, it's painful, right? Sometimes adapting means going without, or actually being in physical pain or being in emotional pain. Adapting doesn't necessarily come easy, but we're fixated on the goal at the end of it. So I think adapting is a choice, adapting is a process, adapting is sometimes a long, painful process that you have to really buy into. I think naturally we are bought into the process, but I think we're starting to live in a world where maybe we're a little bit more distant from that choice. Maybe we live in a world where things are so quick and easy to do. Maybe we're just a little bit more distant from that. So I think it's easier for us to choose not to adapt, but we are still fundamentally meant to be able to adapt, if that makes sense.
And in that note, then, if you look at communities in which we live, do you feel that we are more in a tendency to adapt to survive or adapt to thrive? Like, where do you feel like we're at as a community right now?
It's a really tricky situation. I think it's probably 50-50. I think when you look at our communities, and there are so many people, especially in the world that we're sadly living now, where their situation, whether it be financial or background or war or whatever it might be, that they are in a situation where it is almost impossible for them to do anything but just survive. But then there are also a set of people where they have the ability to maybe thrive. You know, if you look at people that have an albeit limited amount of capability, those are the people that can go and progress and whatnot. So I think it's really tricky, but I think it's probably 50-50 and split. What I think we don't do well as a society is actually working out where that barrier lies and what we can do about it. So for me personally, as somebody that's kind of chronically ill, for example, a lot of people that identify as chronically ill will often see the barriers as fixed without necessarily working out how to overcome those. So I think there's a whole group of people that sit in that middle ground that have the capability to potentially merge from surviving into thriving, but they're not empowered to do so. And that's what we really need to work on.
And if you look at it from that point of view, that's a huge barrier which could cause a lot of people to feel like a victim.
Yeah.
Which then disempowers them to feel like they can do anything about going from survival to thriving, I guess.
Yeah.
Which is a massive issue that we have within society, which is essentially those barriers that you see. Is there anything in terms of community, but more personal side of things, in terms of any things you put in place for yourself to help you adapt to the circumstances that you find yourself in?
So I think there's definitely two things. I think one is the mental remembering that I'm capable. I always talk about this fact that I have this kind of traffic light system. So I have like a a red, amber and green pot, and each one of those is filled with tasks that, so on a green day, a challenge for me to do, maybe climb a mountain or go for a run, big challenges when I'm really fit and well. Amber are things that maybe are in the middle ground, maybe go and do some cooking, or maybe, you know, go out with a friend. And red are when I'm having like a really, really bad day, and they might just be, I don't know, call a friend or go and sit outside and have a coffee. But each one of those tasks is fundamentally designed to remind me that I have that ability, given my circumstances, whatever they may be, to make the choice between survive and thrive. And just having that mentality helps me then go, okay, I have the toolkit I need to be able to then go and progress. I think also being able to then look at the day ahead and go, okay, what do I have? I know my traffic light system, but also physically, what have I got in front of me and what may I depend on? Have I got friends that I can kind of lean on? Have I got, you know, physical things in place that I can lean on? So I think it's about remembering your ability and being really pragmatic about it, but also having that fundamental push within you to try and be more, try and push for more, even on those days where you think I have nothing to give, I can't progress. Just that one step forward, what more can you give?
That's so empowering just for me to hear that, because everyone starts at a different point.
Yeah.
But to have the opportunity and knowledge to know that there's something, I love that, red, amber, green. It's like so simple, and it's taught from childhood, like traffic lights. So it's something you could really use that with young people.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know,
and I think like I use that on a physical, because, you know, I am limited within my physical tasks sometimes. But if you think about anxiety or maybe stress levels, that kind of red, amber, green task thing could apply to so many people, because it just gives you that, right, I need to challenge myself today to do one more thing beyond my capability. And doing that every day reminds you that you are capable of one more thing than you think you are that day. And I think if you get into that mentality, you remember that on a morning where you wake up and think I'm surviving, by the time you go to bed, you could be thriving.
I think that's so inspiring. And the final question around this area that I have really is about, how long does it take you and how do you create your own toolkit like you have? Has that only come from lived experience of overcoming, or has there been parts where actually it's not been because you've been through it, it's because you've read a book or you've been inspired by someone else?
Yeah, of course. So this is a really good question. When people ask me, you know, who inspires you, I say no one, and that sounds really odd, and I think that people might interpret that as being really arrogant. But for me personally, all of my strength comes from lived experience. Everybody has their own story, right? And I think that taking inspiration from other people only goes so far, because there is a barrier between taking inspiration and then comparing yourself. And so for me, I am a sponge to the world around me and taking little bits. But for me, it's just about building on my lived experience. So there are been situations in my life where I've had to choose between staying in the world and not staying in the world, and being here and not being, and fighting and giving up, and, you know, being lying sick or getting up. And there have been so many situations where I've had to make that choice about, you know, keeping myself safe or not, etc. Every single one of those choices has led me to where I am now. And for me, even when I'm in a situation now where I have to make a choice, I just look back on that library of events and remind myself that even the bad decisions haven't fundamentally led me to a bad place. So it's an interesting one. When people talk about inspiration, I think it's great to be a sponge, but don't rely on a single source for inspiration.
Because I think on that side of things, I did a post recently about comparing, and we always compare ourselves, so common, to others.
Completely.
But even comparing yourself to yourself is a really negative thing.
Absolutely.
Like recently, I ruptured my Achilles, and essentially now when I go to the gym and I try and keep fit, if I compare myself to the Chris 6 months ago or 7 months ago, I'm like, I feel so down about it, because I can't do what I was doing then. So I've gone downwards, essentially, but actually remembering that progress isn't linear. That it's not like you get from one point to that point and that's the way. When things go pear-shaped and it goes downhill, that's the natural progression of progress.
I think we as humans, we look at our life as a kind of this linear success pattern, and we start here and then we get promotion and a house and, you know, partner and child and blah, blah, blah. And then we get this cushy retirement and we think of our life on that uphill. And you're completely right. Sometimes our book is just filled with lots of different chapters, and it doesn't necessarily need to be an uphill kind of success story. I've had a really difficult start to 2024, and I've spent a lot of my time ill or been in hospital, etc. And, you know, where if I look back on where I am now compared to where I was 12 months ago and what I am physically capable of, there's a whole stream of things that I am no longer able to do. And if I were to compare myself, like you said, that would be so dangerous. If I were to compare my story to other people's stories, that would also be quite dangerous because, you know, I've not recovered maybe as quick, or the treatment hasn't worked as well, or I haven't had the same finances or the same family support, etc., or whatever. So I think taking inspiration from other people and yourself is useful to an extent, but beyond that, it can be quite dangerous too. So I think you have to just be mindful of where you take your inspiration from.
In episode 171, Amit Ghose shares an incredibly honest and vulnerable conversation about adapting to life whilst living with a visible disability. Amit explains that adaptation was never really a choice for him. From a young age, he had to learn how to navigate a world that often treated him differently because of the way that he looks. He speaks about how he constantly felt the need to make himself seen and heard beyond his appearance, allowing his personality and character to shine so people could look beyond the visible condition that he lives with. What makes Amit's reflection particularly powerful is the way he explores how different communities responded to him throughout his life. Whilst his family was incredibly supportive, other environments often brought judgment, misunderstanding and exclusion. He shares painful experiences growing up within parts of the Asian community, where ideas of perfection, appearance and societal expectations around marriage deeply impacted him emotionally. He recalls moments where comments intended to comfort him instead reinforced feelings of rejection and difference. Amit also reflects on how communities and workplaces often struggle with disability because people fear saying the wrong thing. Many individuals tiptoe around conversations surrounding visible disabilities, uncertain whether to ask certain questions, avoid the subject entirely, or engage openly. Yet despite all of this, Amit continues to use his voice to educate, challenge perceptions, and create understanding.
I didn't, thank you for having me first of all. I mean, I never had the choice. I always had to adapt. You know, I had to make that decision that I need to make myself seen, make myself heard, because I had such a visible condition. You've always got to make that extra effort to stand out and be seen. So for me, what it means to adapt is to be you, to be yourself, but to shine, let your personality shine so people see beyond the looks.
And how have you found the community? Is the community welcome to people who are different, or has it been tough to navigate that space?
It's been incredibly tough, and there's so many anecdotes of incidences that have happened throughout my life where the comments that I've heard from the Asian community in particular, especially growing up, sort of, you get married, it's not you get married, let me start again, sorry. You lost my train of thoughts. It's really difficult because you get a degree, you get a job, the next thing is everyone in the community, especially the Asian community, starts talking about when are you going to get married. And for me, people started coming up to me and saying, oh, when are you going to get married? And then paused and be like, and someone once said to me to comfort me, they go, oh, don't worry if you don't get married. Would you want your daughter to marry someone that looks like you? And I mean, that was to comfort me. And in what world that is comforting, I have no idea. So it was always really challenging. And, my family were very supportive, but the outside community always I'm a big fan of cricket, and we can talk more about that a bit later. But when I started playing cricket as a child, and my dad bought me my first bat and my first ball, everyone was like to my dad, "What are you doing? What if he gets hurt even more?" And my dad was like, "If my boy wants to play cricket, he wants to play cricket." So it's always this expectation or this boundaries that the community and the people around me were setting about me because of the way I look or because of my visible disability.
Why do you think communities, well, for example, in this one, the Asian community, are like that? Why do you think that happens?
Sometimes I think it's a lack of, especially in the Asian community, a lack of education, a lack of understanding, lack of empathy. and it's what the media represents and what sort of society represents to be perfect as well. Like, especially in the Asian community, you've got to look a certain way, you've got to be a certain way, you've got to study medicine or accountancy or engineering to be the best of the best. I talk about how arranged marriages are done in the Asian community as well. It's like almost like virtual Tinder, where you're exchanging photographs and the parents are either swiping left or right. So it's all that sort of thing that happens in our community that builds this expectation of what perfection should look like.
Mm-hmm. And that must be so difficult because it's not under your control. You can't control any of that negativity around you, and you're the one that is living it.
Yeah, well, when you say you can't control it, to an extent you can, by having conversations, and the only way things are going to change and the only way things are going to get better is by having these conversations more. The work that people online on social media are doing now to talk about these things, either in a comedy way or either in an educational way, that this is happening and we need to change it, things will start to change, but it's going to take a long, long time.
So out of all these communities, now let's just look at, you've got family, you've got your community with the Asian community, you've got school growing up, you've got your work community. Like, were they each different towards the way that you were?
Each of them were very different. So family was very supportive, the Asian community was very judgmental. At work, people were tiptoeing a lot of the times, tiptoeing around how to deal with me. And a lot of the times now when I go and do workshops in a lot of organizations, the first question they ask me is, how do we talk to somebody who has a disability? Do we bring it up? Do we discuss it? Do we completely ignore it? So people still tiptoe around this subject in the fear that they might offend the person in question. And
to answer that question, how would you? Like, what is your answer to that?
I think there isn't a straightforward, simple answer. It's based on many things, many factors. And this particular incident, I went into a recruitment agency and they asked me this question, and I said, it's based on what that person's body language is. You can't just suddenly go and say, oh, what's wrong with you, or what's happened to you. It's about feeding that question in, seeding it into the conversations. If you feel that that person is open to it, if you feel as if they don't want to talk about it, if it's not relevant to the job application or what we're talking about, leave it out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes so much sense. And then what about growing up at school? How were other children? Because I go into so many schools and we see that it can be really difficult, because they just go straight for the drugs, especially high school. How was school and that environment for you then?
School was tough. School wasn't easy. Growing up, especially in primary school, start with primary school, kids didn't understand my condition. They were either scared, curious, or they felt as if they're going to be friends with me, then they're not cool enough. And that happened. But in secondary school, I had my eye removed. That's when I had my surgery. I was in year 7 and I had a major surgery, and they removed my right eye and gave me this artificial eye. But before giving me the artificial eye, I had to wear an eye patch. And going into year 7, wearing an eye patch with a swollen face was absolutely brutal. I remember on the lead up of Halloween one year, a group of kids were talking about Halloween masks and going trick-or-treating, and this one kid pointed at me and said, oh, you don't need to buy a Halloween mask. You've got a permanent one on your face. That comment was like 23 years ago, but it still lives with me every single day. And now when I go to schools and do workshops about bullying, I mention that comment and I say, you've got to be very mindful what you say to others because it can leave a lasting impact. That comment still lives with me today. So yeah, all these different communities are very different.
And that comment will live, I guess, forever.
Forever, yeah.
Listening back to these conversations, one thing becomes incredibly clear. Adapting to circumstances is not a weakness. It is one of the greatest strengths that we can develop as human beings. Every single one of these stories reminds us that life will continually change. Circumstances will shift. Plans will fall apart. Unexpected moments will arrive. But within all of that uncertainty, there is still possibility. Steve reminds us to stay flexible and embrace uncertainty with courage. Kate reminds us that thriving and surviving can exist within the same journey. And Amit reminds us of the power of remaining authentically yourself, even when the world struggles to understand you. So wherever you currently find yourself in your life, whether you are thriving, surviving, rebuilding, or simply trying to take the next small step forward, please remember this. You have adapted before, you can adapt again. 3 key takeaways that I've taken from today's episode are that number 1, Adaptation does not mean perfection. Sometimes adapting simply means continuing to move forward, even slowly. Number 2, your lived experience is powerful. Many of the tools we need already exist within the challenges that we have previously overcome. And number 3, flexibility is strength, not weakness. Life rarely follows a perfect plan. Learning to adjust, pivot, and embrace uncertainty can often open the doors we never expected.
Thank you for watching today's episode. If you enjoyed today's episode, then please leave a comment in the comment section below, and we cannot wait to see you for our next episode.